What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Trust Your Board podcast. My name is Cian Wright. I am joined by Mr. William Monroe. Will, how you doing?
Steve, 2 weeks in a row. Look at us. Who would have thought?
I know. It feels like just yesterday we were doing the other one.
Yeah, time is ticking here as we approach the season. We are at this point Monday the 19th, only 2.5 weeks away from football.
Yeah, it's wild to believe. I think we said the same thing last week, but it gets faster and faster, it seems, every week is you don't realize how close it is. And you're like, oh shit, no, we have a draft in a week or a week and a half or whatever it may be. And
our live work league draft, or formerly work league, now friend league. This is year, I think 9, I believe, Steve, maybe 10. I think might be year 10 actually.
How many people are still working there?
That's a good question. In the league, probably at least half.
That's actually pretty
enough
good.
Of them were part of the break off that happened with the division that we started in.
Yeah. That's a pretty good survival rate.
Yeah, I would say majority technically work in the same job, but part of that division was spun off. So a few of our friends still do a similar role, but don't technically
work for
our company anymore.
Yeah, that's fair.
But yeah, 10 years in, and until last year, we had 11 of the original 12.
Wow. Yeah, that's
2 newbies last year that were on the wait list. One of them, Aaron, was on the wait list since year 2 and finally was able to get in.
Yeah, that's wild. That was a higher class. I'd be phenomenally successful after all these years.
It sure would be.
I think there's 3 left from my class, I think.
Yeah, I don't even know if there's any, because our friend Tom technically was spun off. So he still works in a similar role. He's not at our company.
Yeah. Wow.
It is. It'll be interesting. But yeah, I mean, if we're looking at football, we are 2 weeks from this Thursday. We got the first game.
Yeah, man, it's right around the corner. Injuries are happening, and preseason fun. You see all the good highlights and the bad, and starters get named. Minshew was just named the starter for the Raiders.
Yeah.
Not sure that matters.
And
we'll see.
Jaden Daniels officially named the starter there for Washington.
Surprise.
Yeah, big one there. And I know you're not a big college football fan, but first college football game is noon on Saturday.
Yeah,
so
there we go.
Once college football starts firing live bullets, the NFL is right there.
Yeah, man. It's going to be a fun few months here.
We are in it.
Yeah, we are. And we're going to get into a mock draft here. We got another 12-team half PPR. Will, you are in the 3 this time. You were in what, the 6 last time, right?
7, I believe
7.
It was.
Okay, and I am in the 8, and I was on the turn last time. So quite a change of pace for both of us. So it should be fun.
A little more central, kind of on either end, but you're pretty close to the middle.
Yeah. I'm curious. I'm curious. I know. I have an outside shot at getting one of the top 3 running backs if one drops. You're in that spot where you'd be reaching if you grab one of the running backs. You're likely wide receiver, I'd assume, unless CMC slips for some reason.
I've seen some mocks where he slips in, I feel like, real drafts.
Not going to happen.
I mean, it's not going to happen unless it's full PPR, 3 to 4 wide receivers. Maybe you go Hill Lamb, but it does seem like even if he slips to 2, slipping to 3 seems pretty unlikely. Whoever has a second pick, I think, would be a little caught off guard seeing him available.
Yeah. Now, technically, we're a 2 running back or a 2 wide receiver league, but really we're a 3 because you had a wide receiver, tight end flex, and you're going to put a wide receiver there. Really? Yeah,
you're 2 running back, 3 receivers, and 1 flex. For all intents and purposes.
Yeah. So we'll see. You ready to get the ball rolling?
Yeah, let's get it going.
Cool. Let's hit that start button. Let's see what happens. And no. Christian McCaffrey goes second. CeeDee Lamb goes first. So no CMC for you. Decision time, my friend.
Yeah, no decision at all. I think it's a pretty clear 3-player tier here at the top with CMC, CeeDee Lamb, and Tyreek Hill. I think they're pretty clearly the top 2 guys. Tyreek obviously a little later in his career, but I think he's still got at least a couple years here, at least 1 to 2 years of elite production, and maybe more. Hard to doubt this guy, man. He just keeps going. So pretty easy to lock it in here. I think you can make the argument if you wanted to go running back for Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson. But I don't think you can really argue any of the receivers there. I like Chase. Jefferson, I think we're both souring on a little bit with the way that team's going to be run from a quarterback perspective. So, yeah, pretty easy for me here. Not going to waste too much time filibustering. Tyreek Hill will be the pick. Breece Hall, as I mentioned, maybe going with the running back, goes 4. Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Jamar Chase to you at 8.
Yeah, so Bijan is still there. So it basically comes down, do I want to do, I think me and you, we said last time, both fans of the hero RB approach this year.
Mm-hmm.
Do I want to play around and do a hero RB? Or do I just want to experiment with a zero RB? And just see what that looks like. The issue I have with zero RB, actually, it's the issue I have in entirety is I don't like the wide receivers in the next round.
Yeah.
So that does make it tough. But we're going to give it a go. We'll try a zero RB approach. Just do something different. I'm confident in executing on a hero RB. But zero is always kind of iffy. So we're going to roll the dice. I'm going to go with A.J. Brown. I don't think I need to explain myself on that one. Top tier wide receiver. So we've locked him in. Bijan went next. Jonathan Taylor went after that. Puka and Garrett Wilson. That rounds out the first. And then we had Etienne, Barkley, Drake London, and Jahmyr Gibbs going to start the second. Gibbs has now fallen to the 204, where he was, I guess, kind of around that like 109 to 112, depending on your league mark before that. So very interesting.
Yeah, the injury dip is real for people who are getting a little scared.
Yeah, big time. So here we are. I'm committing to the zero RB, but I wouldn't, Kyron Williams is here. That's interesting. Pacheco's here. Plenty of good running backs here if I wanted to strike a balance. Not a lot of years where you could do that. Draft a wide receiver first and then get a running back that you're pretty confident in the second. Usually, it's a little iffier, but here we are. We're going to try with the zero RB approach. We got Marvin Harrison. We got Devontae Adams, Chris Olave, Brandon Ayuk, Debo, Mike Evans, Nico Collins, and this is where it's tough. I don't want Marvin Harrison. I think he's going to be great, but you're drafting him kind of at his ceiling. I mean, in theory, he could go like nuclear and get into the 5-4 spot overall, but like your realistic ceiling is probably around here. So that's a shame. Devontae Adams sitting there, going to be a volume machine, but the quarterback could be having a quarterback carousel, who knows? And then you got Chris Olave sitting there. That us were big fans, but last year was kind of iffy. So that's a tough one. And then you got your 49ers and Brandon Ayuk and Debo Samuel, who would be great. And in fact, I was about to pick Olave, but I think I'm actually going to go with Debo here. Get a part of that San Francisco offense. Get a player that can be utilized on a lot of different ways. I feel more comfortable with him than any of those spots. Just, rookie, drafting on a ceiling. Devontae Adams with the quarterback questions and the touchdown might not be there. Olave, if he has another year like last year, you're not going to be happy with this pick, where I'm pretty sure Debo's going to be fine. As long as he doesn't get hurt, I'm pretty confident in him. So I'm going to lock in Mr. Debo here. We'll see what gets back to me. Kyron Williams does go. Marvin Harrison, A-Chain there at the 208, and Brandon Ayuk at the 209. You're back on the clock.
Yeah, some interesting options here. Devontae Adams available. I think there was a news blurb that he's dealing with a little bit of an injury, but it does seem like it's not going to be too major. And I feel like it's probably the best case scenario starting wise. I mean, look at Gardner Minshew for him. Maybe there's a higher upside there. We know what the work looks like with Aiden O'Connell, if they do move to him at some point in the year. So feels like a pretty solid combination, getting a good floor guy at 2 there to pair with Tyreek Hill and the Devontae Adams. Chris Olave, Mike Evans, Nico Collins, other receivers we'd be looking at. Still a couple of solid running backs in Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs. I really like Pacheco this year. I feel like he's a good target for early to mid third round if you wanted to grab a running back. And then the tight ends still have all of them there. Part of me wants to kind of see what it would look like to go with one of them, but I think I'm going to go ahead and grab Devontae Adams, and then if a Pacheco is not there when I come back, then maybe I'll gamble and see what it looks like to go early on the tight end position. But I'm going to go ahead and just grab that top receiver there. Feel really confident with Tyreek. As you mentioned, it's kind of a 3 receiver league, so I wanted to get that second one here in the first couple rounds. So we go with Devontae Adams, Derrick Henry goes next, Chris Olave, Josh Allen, and Sam Laporta. So it makes it difficult, and partially why I didn't want to go with the tight end in the second round, because I probably would have went Kelsey and then didn't really want to get 2 of the Chiefs here. So the decision comes down here. Do I want to go with an early tight end, Kelsey, or do I want to go with a running back in Pacheco? And I think there's still a handful of tight ends I like and would rather punt that position if I have to than wait to the 4th round to get my first running back, knowing I'm going to need a couple of them. So pretty happy to get Pacheco as my top back in the 3rd round here, early 3rd round as my 3rd player, and pair him with Tyreek and Devontae Adams. So we're going to lock that one in here. After Pacheco, Nico Collins, Josh Jacobs, Stephon Diggs, and Travis Kelce. So no temptation on those top 2 tight ends for you there.
No, but that wasn't the target. I am going to get my target here, but we'll do a quick rundown. Top running backs by ADP on the board: Rachaad White, James Cook, Joe Mixon, Kenneth Walker, and Kamara. Wide receivers, we got Mike Evans, Jalen Waddle, DJ Moore, Malik Neighbors, DK Metcalf, Cooper Kupp, and I am going to bypass them all, Will, and I am going to create a stack here with Mr. Jalen Hurts. Give myself Hurts and AJ Brown, which I think
those stacks can be dangerous when you get them for the rest of the league.
Yeah, I think that's an optimal start for a 0 RB. You're getting a top tier quarterback that actually stacks with your number 1 wide receiver.
Oh yeah,
that's a big win. So Mike Evans goes off the board. Jalen Waddle, Patrick Mahomes, Rachaad White. That rounds out the 3rd. To start the 4th, we got Lamar Jackson, Neighbors, Cook, and DJ Moore. So take a peek at the tight ends. I could go with a Trey McBride here. Again, kind of fits into the 0 RB. I'm going to have a top tier quarterback, a top tier tight end, 2 good wide receivers. It does feel bad doing the onesie positions like this, but that's kind of the advantage. That's kind of what you try to do on a 0 RB. And if I wait, I doubt Mark Andrews gets back to me, maybe, but injury prone, Kincaid, you're hoping for upside. Pitts, same thing, upside. Kittle, kind of boom bust. Like, it gets kind of iffy after that. But, our boy Cooper Kupp's in here, and that is pretty tasty.
Temptation.
Yeah. DK Metcalf's here, Pittman's here. I mean, there's plenty of good wide receivers. I'm going to try this tight end thing, though. I don't like it.
Yeah, that's what mocks are for, right?
Yeah, exactly. We'll see how it plays out. I'm confident in getting another a solid wide receiver a little bit later to as my 3rd, but we'll see. So I'll lock in Trey McBride. We'll see what happens. Cooper Kupp goes immediately. Devontae Smith, DK Metcalf, Pittman, and you are back on the clock.
Yeah, so a little run on the wide receivers. I was thinking about trying to maybe grab another one to kind of stack in there, but not the case. So at this point, we have top quarterbacks on the board of Stroud, Richardson, Burrow. Still have 2 in that tight end tier of Mark Andrews and Kincaid. And then we've got some running backs available here: Mixon, Walker, Kamara, and then kind of that next tier of wideout. I'd probably be looking at like a Tank Dell if I wanted to go wide receiver, but seems like a little more of a luxury. There is still a few running backs. I think volume guys like Walker and Joe Mixon are very solid. Kamara, a little more upside, a little more injury risk there, I think. But you'd think that he's going to be pretty locked in. It looks like it's going to be just him and Jamal Williams. Could still be some vulturing from Taysom Hill, though. He's been getting some work in the preseason at running back, so it seems like they want to utilize him in many different ways. So if I was sitting here, I'd be looking at a Ken Walker or Joe Mixon, especially because if I do want to go tight end, I know I'm pretty confident I can get one of those 2 top guys in the next round, given that one of the 2 teams behind me already has Sam Laporta. So would imagine they're not going to take 2. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab Ken Walker here. I am high on Ken Walker this year. I think he's due for a big year. Obviously not played all in the preseason. They're just saving him up here. And I think Last year there was a bit of a discount because of Charbonnet being drafted there. He's still a good running back, but more of a change pace guy. The way that they're using him, it seems like they really want to rely on Ken Walker, and I do think maybe the offense isn't going to be as good as it was 2 years ago, but I can't see it being as bad as it was last year. Kind of tying into Geno Smith himself, having a great year 2 years ago and a pretty poor year last year. Getting him as my second back, pairing him with Pacheco, knowing that I'm going to be able to get either a third running back or one of those top 5 tight ends next, really helps here. So Anthony Richardson goes next, Tank Dell to round out the end of the round. In the 4th round, Joe Mixon, and then Aaron Jones. So we've got still all those quarterbacks available besides Anthony Richardson. Tank Dell goes, which is probably the biggest temptation at the wide receiver position. Don't think I would want to grab a running back, after Kamara, Connor, David Montgomery, kind of that next tier. So then I'm going to go ahead and strike at tight end. I am still pretty high on Mark Andrews. I know people are a little wary with the way the injuries went last year. He missed practice today with an undisclosed designation, so we don't know exactly what it'll be, but it does seem like he's fine after that car crash. And barring injury, we know that he is used in the red zone. Like, there's little question marks with, is Trey McBride going to do it again this year? Is Kincaid going to break out? We know what Mark Andrews is, right? Maybe he doesn't have the unknown upside that the other guys do, but I think that we know he's relied on by Lamar Jackson. We don't know which receivers are going to be there with him or who are going to be the top guys, but we know it's Mark Andrews. So I'm going to go ahead and lock in Mark Andrews, get my onesie out of the way, and probably look to see how long I'll wait on the quarterback position. After him immediately goes Dalton Kincaid, James Conner, George Pickens, and Alvin Kamara.
Okay, beautiful. So I'm committing myself to at least one more wide receiver before we look at the running backs here. And we have some solid options on the board. One does jump out to me. We have Zay Flowers here, T. Higgins, Amari Cooper, Keenan Allen, Christian Kirk, Terry McLaurin, Rome Odunze, Jaden Reed. We have some nice, or I guess a nice upside shot in Zay Flowers. Kind of know what T. Higgins is going to be. Solid kind of guy. But the one I'm looking on is the next on the list, Amari Cooper. He had a good rapport with Watson when Watson played last year. He's definitely still got it. There's not a lot of other options there. Njoku was solid last year, but mostly with Flacco, and I'm not worried about Jerry Jeudy, and the other options there just haven't really materialized and hit their upside. So I like Amari Cooper as my third option here. Now, if Watson gets hurt, then what happens? I don't know. That's a little worrisome. Ideally they bring Flacco back or something like that, but all these guys carry that risk. Zay Flowers could not take a step forward. Burrow could, be worse healing from the injury with Higgins. Keenan Allen's got a rookie quarterback and plenty of other options to throw to. Christian Kirk's probably a solid option here, as just a nice stable guy. But maybe, what's his name? The rookie, Brian Thomas comes in and comes in and steals some of his thunder away, and he ends up being a back pick. So they're all risky at this point. So I like Amari Cooper's upside. I like the rapport. So I want to lock him in as my 3. I'm happy there. Then we'll peek over at the running back position. So we got Stroud went, Burrow, Swift, and Zay Flowers. That rounds out the 5th. To start the 6th, we got Kyle Pitts, Keenan Allen, Higgins, and George Kittle. So if I did want another wide receiver, wanted to keep committing to that 0 RB, we got Kirk is still on the board, Terry McLaurin, Roman Dunze, Jalen Reed, Xavier Worthy, Chris Godwin, Calvin Ridley, Rashee Rice. Ooh, tempting. But this is kind of a better tier. You get, AJ Brown, Debo, and Amari Cooper, all real solid options. You could take a dart throw at a real high upside guy in a Jalen Reed or Xavier Worthy, Rashee Rice, Calvin Ridley here. And, Calvin Ridley's pretty safe. But, if Jalen Reed ends up not being the guy and it is Christian Watson, then you're not too burned because you're still solid at wide receiver. We'll take a look at running backs. David Montgomery's here. Najee Harris, Ramondre Stevenson, some real good volume guys. Samir White, I'm not interested in. We got Mostert, Tony Pollard, Jonathan Brooks, Nick Chubb. So this is a tough one because there is a tier break here. Like Montgomery, Stevenson, I'm not that interested in, but Montgomery, Najee, Mostert, really those three I would be happy with in this situation. Do any of them get back to me? That is the question. My assumption is no. If I look at the ADP, Mostert's down there. If some jumps happen, then Mostert could get to me. And there's so many. Man, I would love a Calvin Ridley here. Or She Rice would be great too. So both positions are kind of like in a tier break where I'm not as happy with the people after them. Then if that's the case, I'm going to play it safe. Yeah, I'm going to play it safe. And there's an injury that's kind of breaking the tie for me. I'm going to draft David Montgomery because if this Gibbs hamstring thing is a problem that lingers into the season, I just won the league, I think. So I'm going to lock in Mr. David Montgomery as my my first running back. We'll see what gets back to me. And I'd love to get one of those wide receivers again. Kirk goes, and then Kyler Murray, Stevenson, and McLaurin, you're back up.
Yeah, so it took some of the temptation for quarterback away here. I know we're both pretty high on Kyler. He's someone that I would take, and a lot of guys I want to try to secure, some type of a stack with. So, when I get Tyreek in the first round, my mind is like, all right, when would I have to take a Tua, right? That's probably not till the 9th or 10th round. So you can afford to wait on quarterback in that scenario. A couple of other guys here like Jaden Reed and stacking that with Jordan Love could be interesting here. But I think there's a couple of receivers that, like you mentioned there, really like Jaden Reed, Calvin Ridley this year. So there's not a ton of running backs I like in this area. Najee maybe gets a little bit of a bump with the injury to Warren, especially if he can get out to an early start. Could have some trade value, especially as a third running back. But I feel like that's more of like picking because of a need than just the actual good player. So I'm going to go ahead here and grab Jaden Reed. And see if I can get a Calvin Ridley next to get 4 receivers locked in here and really punting the quarterback for a bit. If not, we'll see kind of what's best on the board, maybe getting that stack with the Jordan Love or She Rice. So going to go ahead and grab Jaden Reed first. Najee goes, Rome Odunze, Evan Ingram, and Zamir White. So Najee, a little bit of tempting there, not too big on any of the other guys. So here it comes down to a Calvin Ridley or She Rice for me. Jordan Love would be a nice stack there, but I think the way my team is built, I'm going to be stronger if I can continue to stack up at the receiver position. Obviously not a 0 RB, but would feel pretty strong getting a 4th receiver here in one of those 2 with Mark Andrews and 2 strong running backs. So it's tough. I think this one, I would go Calvin Ridley over She Rice. There's still some question marks there with Rice, and I'm definitely high on him. Wish I could get both, but I just think Calvin Ridley is due for a big year. I think he's being severely undervalued. Obviously, popping up a little bit more now with the DeAndre Hopkins news, with the injury there. But Calvin Ridley, was great before he got suspended years ago. Been good since he came back, and I think people are a little worried about this Tennessee offense, but there's a good chance that they surprise you this year. I'm going to go ahead and lock in Calvin Ridley, get 4 receivers, kind of lock down my flexes with them, and if I have a running back breakout, even better, later in the draft. But feeling pretty good about most of my depth at receiver. So Jordan Love goes next, Dak Prescott, Chris Godwin, Raheem Mostert to you.
Yeah, I'm glad Mostert went because that would have been very tempting. And a 0 RB, that would have been hard to pass up, but he's gone. So there's one guy left that I wanted from my wide receiver tier break. You mentioned him, Mr. Rashee Rice. The more time passes, the more it seems like nothing is going to happen with the suspension this year. And if that's the case, this is likely a pretty big steal. It's interesting. I don't know if anyone's really mentioned it. Probably it's probably all over the place, and I'm just repeating something. But like, there's very interesting parallels between this situation and a Tyreek situation, where you had Tyreek pending a suspension. They drafted Mecole Hardman, and now you hear Rasheed potential suspension. They drafted Xavier Worthy. Hopefully Worthy works out better than Mecole did. But it's just interesting how that transpired. But yeah, it's gonna be Rasheed Rice. He's gonna be my wide receiver 4. He's gonna give me that upside that I'm looking for. Where if he does break out for Patrick Mahomes, that's gonna be pretty amazing for this team. So we'll lock him in. And we will see what gets back to me. Xavier Worthy does go immediately afterwards, as well as Hollywood Brown. 3 Kansas City wide receivers in a row. That's interesting.
That's actually pretty good. And that tells you the question marks behind Mark Andrews at the receiver position.
It does, yeah. I'm Travis Kelce. But yeah,
yes, sorry.
Yeah, it's all good. I'm surprised to see Hollywood is high. Like, I thought there was a clear tier break between Rasheed and Xavier to Hollywood, but
Hollywood's still injured, right?
Yeah,
I'm not sure
when
he's going to be back.
Yeah. So that's
could just be an ADP thing. Yeah, it looks like as of 6 days ago, they say 4 to 6 weeks. So call it 3 to 5 weeks from here.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, so that is what it is. Jordan Addison goes. Nick Chubb, that rounds out the 7th. Then we have the start the 8th, Zach Moss, Tony Pollard, and Njoku, and Jonathan Brooks. So I'm back on the clock. We'll take a look at the wide receivers. Lai McConkey, Deontay Johnson, Keon Coleman, D-Hop, Watson, Brian Thomas, JSN, James Williams. So we got some solid upside options at running back. We have Javonte Williams. We have Jalen Warren, who would be great here if he didn't just get hurt. Eckler, Singletary, Brian Robinson, Trey Benson, Gus Edwards. So some solid volume-like guys here. I think this is a tough one because you can make a case for a lot of them. Jalen Warren's hurt, so I'm not really interested there. Eckler, I'm still not sure about. I know a lot of people are out on him, but like in the 8th round, if he's not going to return the glory, but if he's a Sproles-like guy who just catches the ball a lot, that's going to be pretty valuable.
Yeah, it's interesting that he and Brian Robinson are going pretty close to each other because I really don't know what to make. I wouldn't be surprised if Brian Robinson leads that team in fantasy points at the running back position.
Yeah, 100%.
But it could go either way.
It could. So that's a tough one. And then, Singletary is like the only dude there in New York, and it's going to get a lot of volume. And Gus is there, going to get a lot of work there in LA, you would assume. And then I think we're going to circle around my pick. I feel comfortable with David Montgomery as like a safer option. I think I'm going to take the upside of Javonte Williams and that, another year removed from the injury, maybe he puts it back together and we see what we saw a few years ago. Worst case, he's going to be a committee, and I'd assume the best one in that committee. So that's not ideal. But if I could pair him and get like a Gus or a Zeke on my next pick, I like that combo. So we're going to take the upside shot on Javonte there. We'll see what happens. Brock Purdy goes. Bowers goes. Deontay Johnson, Jalen Warren, and you are back on the clock.
Yeah, so Javonte would have been the main target of the running back bunch here. As you mentioned there, I think there's a lot of upside, and especially for your team, you could get a top 24 RB, maybe even top 16 RB at a very discounted price here in the 8th round. Offense, still a big question mark, but I think you've got a little bit more floor with all of your other positions besides running back. So definitely a good call there. The running back that I'd be looking at in place of him would be the aforementioned Brian Robinson. I think the offense is going to be better than people think. I think they're going to be pretty handily the 3rd place team in the division. The Giants, they have some skill players now, but just don't trust that team as a whole. And I do think Washington could surprise some teams wins games this year. Obviously, it's going to come down to Jaden Daniels, and as we see, it doesn't typically work out too well for rookie wide receivers, even rookie tight end or receivers of a rookie quarterback, tight ends. But the running backs do tend to do pretty well. So I do think maybe he loses a couple rushing touchdowns to Daniels, but Daniels is a good rushing quarterback, but he's not particularly the Cam Newton, Jalen Hurts, like larger player that's going to be able to pound it in at the goal line. So still think he could get his fair share of goal line carries. So we're going to lock him in here, and then we'll be looking at potentially going with the quarterback, or looking at maybe one of these receivers that are at a good value here. So going Brian Robinson here for my third running back. Keon Coleman next. Devin Singletary, Lad McConkey, and then DeAndre Hopkins off the board. Which makes it a little difficult here because I would really like to get the stack here of Tua with Tyreek here in the 9th round. Jaden Daniels a little bit lower, still another guy that I wouldn't mind. I kind of had them both in mind here for this 9th round pick. Since this is a computer draft, if there's any double quarterbacks taken, but I don't know. I guess this is probably around what time it starts, but I almost assumed there would be a second quarterback taken for a team here, Steve. I don't know. Does this seem like maybe when it starts, or is this a little late for the computer?
Yeah, I'm surprised it hasn't started already, to be honest with you. But yeah. I've never paid that much attention to like narrow it down to a round. But yeah, it feels like last round should have been it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was like. Oh, Tua would be nice. Oh, I'll probably be gone. Caleb will be gone. It'll be a good time for Jaden Daniels. But at this point, I think I would really like a JSN upside here. Brian Thomas upside, especially having 4 receivers ready. That feels like it gives me a lot of upside, a lot of flexibility. But having Tyreek and just the power of a stack, as you alluded to there with Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown, I think it's just important to kind of get that stack. So while we're not getting the Alabama quarterbacks with their current wide receivers, which are their wide receiver 2s on their teams, we're getting the Alabama quarterback with their wide receiver 1s and Tyreek Hill and A.J. Brown. And then that feels just as good, if not better. So going to go ahead and lock into as my quarterback here in the 9th round. Jake Ferguson goes next, the first of the double QBs, and Caleb Williams, Austin Eckler, and Christian Watson to you.
Yeah, that's a shame. I really wanted Christian Watson here. I thought that would have been a nice,
good upside.
Yeah, good upside here. I'm going to stick with another upside shot though, and I'm going to draft Brian Thomas. I think this team's kind of made for him because we're not expecting him to bust out right away. He's different from Christian Watson, who's been in the league a couple years. We know he's got the upside and it could start week 1. The likelihood of it starting for Brian Thomas week 1 is not high. Typically it's like halfway through the season with these rookies. And given he'll be sitting,
he's got the opportunity to hit the field quick.
He does.
Yeah, maybe not the production that you're hoping that you're going to get at the end of the year.
Yeah, you're hoping to see, targets and catches, and he'll get 40 to 60 yards a game and a touchdown here and there, and then steadily starts increasing, and he gets better and better, and he becomes fantasy usable, or hopefully a fantasy darling. And I have the wide receivers to allow him to sit back and do that. So we're going to go ahead and lock him in there, get myself a little bit more upside. JSN goes after that. Another great upside shot if you want to take it. Goddard. There goes Daniels. He is not the first backup, second backup now. Gus Edwards goes. Oh man, this one hurt a little bit. Gus,
a little bit of a run.
Yeah, Gus went, who I would have liked. And then Trey Benson, Corum, Zeke, who I also would have liked, and Tajay Spears, who I wouldn't have minded either. So that sucks. And all that, and Jameson Williams is still here. So it probably would have been better to go with Gus or Zeke and then, get a Jameson instead of what I'm about to do. But let's see here. We got Jerome Ford, who, in all honesty, is a pretty good pick right here. For a 0 RB team. You're not likely to get a full season of usage, but, it should be a solid 2 for a while there. Chase Brown is your upside shot with Cincinnati, that he's the starter. We got Charbonnet sitting there, Chuba, J.K. Dobbins, Rico Dowdle, Jalen Wright. So yeah, but far and away, it seems like to me, Jerome Ford's the best bet here. Not going to be a lot of upside, but he should be a safe option. If Javonte Williams is just nothing, yeah, I'm good to plug in Ford for a few weeks. Potentially the whole year. Chubb's injury is pretty bad. There's a world where he comes back and he's just not relevant.
Steve, before you pick, I've just noticed some very interesting builds. Team 6 was looking at you and said, I see your 0 RB and I raise you a 0 RB. Took their first running back in the 9th round.
Yeah, and Eckler too. So that's an interesting one. But I don't like this team.
Yeah. Team 2 and team 12 also only have 2 wide receivers through any 9 rounds.
Yeah, I hate team 2.
Yeah, that one's really interesting. Yeah. Obviously can't start more than 3 of those running backs, but
and Hopkins is hurt.
Yeah.
So, if Calvin Ridley had made it to them, oh no, he wouldn't have.
Yeah.
That's the wrong way. So yeah, no, hate that team. Six has got good teams like Detroit's there, Philly's there. You
Yeah.
got Kyler, you got the stack of Kyler and Marvin
Yeah.
Harrison. That's good, but like, I just don't like the rookie at
Maybe you go with
two.
James Cook over a Stephon Diggs there to get a running back
Exactly. Yeah,
earlier,
I don't
right?
like Diggs. And because you could have a rookie that maybe starts off slow, Diggs isn't great, and then if
Hmm.
Pickens doesn't break out the way you want him to, then suddenly your wide receiver core that's supposed to be great isn't. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's a little.
It's a very interesting build. Obviously, computer builds, but when it happens like that, it's just interesting to see.
Yeah, it is. It is. I like mine better. So we're going to add Mr. Jerome Ford there, get a little safety. Hawkinson goes, then Chase Brown, Romeo Dobbs, Jameson Williams. You're back on the clock.
All right, so Ford and Brown were kind of the last two that I was hoping for at running back here. Still a few guys a little later in Chuba and Dobbins that I wouldn't mind taking a shot on. But still looking for some upside plays, and I think getting an upside play at the wide receiver position would be nice now. Similar to your Brian Thomas pick, looking at an AD Mitchell. I think he is going to be a stud. Whether he breaks out early this year, late this year, next year, I think it remains to be seen because there are some solid receivers there, and obviously it comes down to Anthony Richardson continuing to develop, staying healthy. But I do think there's a chance he, breaks out early and we see him really turn into a stud. He has kind of all the measurables. You saw his early breakout age. Just didn't necessarily have the production in college. Kind of similar to a Lad McConkey. Both guys went to Georgia. AD Mitchell ended up transferring to Texas, but Georgia's a pretty run-first team. So we've seen a lot of receivers maybe come out of there lately that don't have the production, but still have the skill set. And the team was just good. They didn't necessarily need to throw it as much. So I'm going to go ahead and grab AD Mitchell here. We'll see what running backs get back to me. Jared Goff goes, Dalton Schultz, Curtis Samuel, and Cortland Sutton. So works out. Two receivers go. Imagine AD would have been one of those. No running backs. So happy with that. And going to look here for the running back position. And it's interesting. Had I maybe only had two running backs, I feel like Chuba would have maybe been a little more of a priority to get that depth, get a guy that I can plug in, right? Similar situation to you where like a Chuba Hubbard could be nice as a guy that's going to play early, kind of like a Jerome Ford. But I feel pretty good about the three that I have. So I want to go a little more upside at the running back position. I think that's going to be a J.K. Dobbins. There's still some good rookies available, some other later guys that could pop, but J.K. Dobbins is a guy that could come in and just not look the same, right? Coming off of a pretty bad injury, and it could be done, right? So it could be lighting this pick on fire here in the 11th round, but he could come out and take the job from Gus Edwards and be the one, or it could be a pretty split backfield, and that's kind of what you're hoping for here with your fourth running back. So going to take a nice upside shot here with J.K. Dobbins here in the 11th round. And after him, got some more quarterbacks, Trevor Lawrence, then Tyler Lockett, Justin Herbert, who just got back on the practice field today. So it's good for all the Chargers players here in fantasy. And then Khalil Shakir, to you.
Yeah, so back on the clock, I wouldn't mind a depth wide receiver, somebody that is more known. Like I'm looking at like a Josh Palmer.
Tyler Lockett, maybe?
Yes, maybe a lot.
If he didn't just go 3 picks before.
Exactly, yeah. Palmer's not bad for that. Brandon Cooks isn't bad for that. End of the list. Yeah, kind of. Just in case, Brian Thomas busts and Rashee Rice gets suspended, I'm down to my original 3, which is still great, but, having a depth guy that you can rely on would be nice. But I think I'm just going to keep taking dart throws at running back, at least for the next 2 rounds. And maybe my last 2, I'll go with wide receivers. But I, too, am going to look for some upside. And while I don't think it's going to happen, Rico Dowdle has the opportunity. He's got an old man in front of him. He's on one of the best offenses in the league. So if he can, we'll know in the first few weeks likely what his role is going to be. And, if it is 50-50, there's a world where he starts overtaking as the year goes on and starts to impress. I don't think it's going to happen. But I'm taking the shot because I want some upside at the running back position. So we'll lock him in there. Jacoby Myers goes. Charbonnet goes. Brandon Cooks, Freiermuth. That rounds out the 11th. Josh Palmer, Komet, Judy, and Mike Williams starts the next one. So not a lot changing here as far as who's available. I'll tell you what, it is really nice not needing to look at quarterback or tight end for pretty much your whole draft. That's a big benefit to drafting them too early.
Yeah. Usually it feels like it hurts how your team feels, but being able to just get value at the running back receiver position here late is nice.
Yeah, for real. It's a big winner. So I am going to go with another upside guy that I don't think we talked about in our last draft. I am going to go with the same team that you just drafted from, Will. I'm going to go with Kamani Vidal.
I had him queued up
in LA. Yeah, just another kind of murky situation. You have an older guy in Gus Edwards. And I think a lot of people were surprised got a starting job. You have a broken J.K. Dobbins in front of him. Like, he's the young man, and if he comes out and ends up being the guy, I don't think it's going to be that surprising. I won't be surprised. So that's a nice upside shot for me, I think. So I'm going to go ahead and lock him in. Leggett goes, Luke Musgrave, John Dotson, and Chuba Hubbard. You are back up.
Yeah, I'm surprised to see Chuba almost get back to me as I was debating between him and J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah, pretty wild.
Would have been a pretty solid fifth back here late in the draft, but alas, not the case. So as we mentioned, we're really sticking to the two multiple positions as we had our onesies locked up. Receiver, a guy, Rashid Shaheed, I think was a darling last year. Big play guy. Got worked more and more. But I think with the changes to the kickoff, which I don't think we talked about too much here, it definitely helps some players get a little bit extra boost. Right. I think a lot of leagues will do touchdowns. Some leagues will do some yardage points, maybe like 50, 25 or 50 yards per point. But even if you just do touchdowns, I mean, that could really help because we have seen returns increase dramatically in the preseason. And it's not going to equate to everyone scoring a touchdown every play on returns, but you get that many more. I think it was somewhere, up near 70, 80% returned versus like 30%, 20, 30%. So you're getting a lot more returns happening. You're going to have some more touchdowns. And a guy like Rashid Shaheed is, I think, fantasy relevant on his own, and it's going to get a little bit of a boost out of those returns. So a good upside shot that I want to take here. I'm going to lock him in first as my sixth receiver. After him, Gabe Davis, Kirk Cousins, Jalen Wright, and Kendre Miller go off the board. So we're staying here in the receiver and running back spot. The running backs here, Tyler Chandler, Marshawn Lloyd. We've got Tyler Algier, Antonio Gibbs, some interesting rookies later in Ray Davis, Tyrone Tracy. But we'll look at the running back spot here at the receiver spot. Got rookies in Jalen Polk, Ricky Pearsall, I think still injured, right? And could it be a good late selection for somebody? Should you be drafting now and Ayuk gets traded and then he gets healthy, he could step on the field and be the two. And then you have like a Troy Franklin. So couple of interesting options, not too many that I'm particularly loving left here, and there's a handful of running backs. So I'm going to go with one guy that I am interested in late in the draft here, kind of another breakout guy like Rashid Shaheed. That's a Jalen Polk. The draft capital's there. He went in the second round. He's late. You're just taking dart throws here. If he steps in and looks like the one and is getting work from a Brissett or the rookie in Drake May, we could see that early breakout of a rookie, kind of like I'm hoping for with A.D. Mitchell. If not, guy I'm not too mad to kind of move on from early on. So we'll go him and then just kind of look to get another RB dart throw in the last round. After him, Ty Chandler, Marshawn Lloyd, Tyler Algier, and Aaron Jones.
Aaron Rodgers.
Yes, Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Jones went quite early.
Yeah, that's actually that's an interesting pick in the 13th round.
Brock Purdy, Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I thought you were going to get Dontavian Wicks. I thought he was the upside guy that you were looking for, and I was going to
Yeah, I
be.
already have Jaden Reed, so
Oh, you
otherwise he
do,
would be a
yes,
solid shot at this stage in the draft.
yeah. So I'm thinking I can more think out loud because you don't pick between me and that pick. So
You and you.
I'd like an upside guy and a safe guy, ideally one of each. So like Wicks would be great here. Quentin Johnston, don't believe it, but not a bad option. Adam Thielen, I think, is a pretty good for my like safe vet kind of guy. My depth piece that I'm looking, so that's pretty solid down here. Michael Wilson's here if you want to play that game for a breakout. We have Marvin Mims is still here. Bateman, I don't know what you categorize him as. He's kind of a safe
Hopeful
guy.
for your dynasty managers like
Yeah,
us.
yeah, for real. So like he's there. Demarcus Robinson is an interesting one here for LA for the Rams. If the Puka injury is serious, well, no, Robinson. Greg Dortch has been getting a little bit hype lately. That's like the end of the list. Hey, Jalen Hyatt, I forgot about him. Wow. Yeah, Treylon Burks is down here. Mingo's down here. A.T. Perry. Yeah, we're pretty much at the end of the list. So my target, I'm going to get Dontavian Wicks. I'm going to hope for Adam Thielen on the way back. Locked him in there. Stafford goes. Josh Downs, Taysom Hill, Pearsall, Troy Franklin, Adam Thielen. Gosh darn it. At 1402.
Goes.
Gibson, and then Sanu. So that sucks. Let's see here. I'm looking at the tight ends. There's really nothing of interest there. There's no need for a quarterback. Our my guy from last year, Khalil Herbert down here, poor guy.
Our guy. I was looking at him. I actually had him queued up late as like Swift gets hurt. Maybe he steps in and he's the starter.
Yeah. Boy, this is a shame. This is a tough one. Well, I don't want to do it, but I'm just going to grab Quentin Johnston, an upside guy, and we'll just see what his usage is week one and probably cut him. But I'll got the upside if the volume's there and something happens. That could be a big win, but definitely not the safe guy I was hoping for. Then we had Davis, McLaughlin, K. Dotton, and Darnell Mooney there to get us up to 1409 and your final pick.
Yeah, so looking at a running back here, kind of just wanted to get a guy that see what he can do early on. We've got some rookies in Tyron Tracy. Looks like he's actually already back and running on the field after that what looked like maybe a gruesome injury. Braylon Allen, back up, another rookie in New York. You're really kind of stashing him for a week or two to make sure the starter's healthy. We never want to wish injury on anybody, but if you have a viable backup there, it's a guy that you want to stash because there unfortunately is major injuries early in the year, each and every year. You have a Khalil Herbert, kind of our guy that we were looking at there. But then I'm going to go with is a different rookie with a little bit murkier of a backfield and one that you took early on there. It's going to be an Aldrick Estime here in Denver. I think he has a good shot at earning a role and then potentially being in a backfield with a Jaleel McLaughlin who was just taken and Javonte, who you mentioned earlier there. Feels like it could go one of a couple different ways, and a guy that if he's not producing in week one or week two, I'll feel comfortable moving on from. So we'll lock him in and get him at running back. After him, Hunter Henry and Tyrone Tracy go to complete our draft.
Yeah, there we go. So Will, again, in the 103, want to give us a rundown on your team?
Yeah, so we've got Tua at quarterback. We've got Pacheco, Ken Walker, Brian Robinson, J.K. Dobbins, and Aldrick Estime at running back. Got Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, Jaden Reed, Calvin Ridley, A.D. Mitchell, Rashid Shaheed, and Jalen Polk at wide receiver, and Mark Andrews at running back. I'm feeling pretty good there. I mean, Devontae Adams, it feels weird to not feel good about him. I feel like I should feel better about him than I do. But as the second receiver with Tyreek and feeling pretty good about Pacheco and Walker and Andrews after that, the team does feel pretty strong across the board. Being able to lock those four receivers in at the flexes and receiver spots, the two running backs. I really like my starters. I think Brian Robinson could easily break in, for if somebody gets hurt or if Ridley or Reed falter a little early, and got some good upside shots beyond that. So feeling pretty solid. How about you?
So out of the 8 spot, went 0 RB. So we got Jalen Hurts at the quarterback position. Our running backs are Montgomery, Javonte Williams, Jerome Ford, Dowdle, and Vidal. Our wide receivers, A.J. Brown, Debo Samuel, Amari Cooper, Rashee Rice, Brian Thomas, Dontavian Wicks, and Quentin Johnston. And then at tight end, Trey McBride. It's obviously scary because, I'm not sitting here with a Kyron Williams or a Brees Hall or, James Cook or, any sort of near top running back. But, look at it. Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Debo, McBride, Cooper, Rashee Rice makes me feel a whole lot better. So
Yeah,
I kind of,
didn't feel that bad.
as far as 0 RB goes, I dare say I couldn't pull it off any better. I'm looking through and I don't really see. Mostert would have been nice. Like getting Mostert in those middle rounds would have been great, but like I'm just looking at the board, I don't see anything that I would do differently, really. You could always talk about like Javonte Williams, or would you rather have Brian Robinson or Singletary or something like that? Like, sure, you could talk about stuff like that, but I don't see anything glaringly obvious. I like this, and if I was in this spot in our draft, I would try to execute on this. I think. Jalen Hurts probably isn't making it in 308 in our league, but yeah, I like it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. It depends on if a quarterback run starts in the second, right? Or if you do have that potential to get some of those high-end QBs in the third, fourth round.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting. I like it. But hey, yeah, that's going to wrap up the mock draft. Tune in next week for hopefully another mock. Got to dance around some schedule to figure it out, but we should be able to figure something out here. But yeah, until then, folks, trust your board.